Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming, especially this close to the end of the break. I'm very pleased to introduce Brian Whitman today. Brian is currently the CTO and he was the co-founder of a company called the EchoNest. I've been following the EchoNest quite closely for a few years, and a number, who here is in mob dev with the EchoNest? Anyone? A few, yeah. So I've been following them quite closely, and I just said to Brian that I mentioned to the CEO that I'm kind of waiting for them to do something evil, and they keep disappointing me. And Brian says, yeah, you're going to wait a long time, basically, which is nice to hear. So Brian started EchoNest after finishing his PhD at the Media Lab, and before that, he was at Columbia University in the Natural Language Processing group. And I think I'm just going to turn things over to him. Go for it, Brian.
You're all over there. Did you notice that? Does this always happen when you have a group? Yeah? It's just weird. Yeah, so if I start screwing up, you're all going to run out. That's cool, whatever. I have to hook this thing up. 1 second, sorry. Anyway, thanks for coming. It's really great to see everybody. As Debbie was saying, I am the co-founder CTO of this company called the EchoNest, and I'm here today to tell you about music and what's happening to it and what we're doing about it and what everybody else is doing about it. A lot of things are happening all at once, and it's really great for me personally to be sitting in a spot where I could watch it all and see it go on. So it's really fun to be able to explain to people that might really be into music or know a lot about the music industry, but maybe not see all this coming all at once. Because in the next year or so, a lot of crazy things are about to happen that may not all be good things. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, but whatever. I want to introduce myself first. So I'm Brian. This is what I tell people at cocktail parties or whatever. I teach computers to listen to music. It's the closest thing I could get to whatever I do all day. I do a lot of things, but usually it comes down to this. There's a lot of computers, there's a lot of music. We try to figure out how to get them to understand one another, one way or another. For that, though, and the reason kind of why I'm doing all of this, I came from a relatively interesting background, probably not to you guys, but I was a musician for a while. I was very serious, really full-time, living in New York, trying to be an electronic musician. This was late 90s, early 00s. I was making what probably sounds pretty terrible these days, electronic music. It was called intelligent dance music at the time, probably the worst genre name that you could ever imagine. It's like the only genre name that complimented itself while you said it. That's the best part about it. It was like the guys had such a chip on their shoulders about, techno or whatever, that they had to invent a word to make them sound better than everybody else. Nonetheless, there I was. That's me, like the Knitting Factory in New York and other places. I was really making a go at it, but it wasn't for me. After a while, you're making kind of fringe music, not exactly fringe, but definitely on the edge of what most people listen to. Your biggest problem is how do you get out there more? Everyone's listening to, I guess at the time, whatever, William Orbit or Orbital or some terrible, nice sounding electronic music, and then, there's all this cool stuff happening, all your friends love it, it's a big time, but it's not really getting out into the world, and that really bothered me. And at the same time, I was actually making software to make music. This was a big deal, too. These are Palm Pilot applications. I was a huge proponent of what everyone does now. You all make music on your iPhones or whatever. This is a much bigger deal back then. It was very exciting. So I had this computer science background. I had this terrible notion of what we call fish cut bait in the industry, where you end up making things to make things instead of actually making the things. Some of you might recognize this problem. You sit down, I have this great idea to make a piece of artwork or a piece of computer music or whatever, and you sit around all day and you work on the process to make the actual thing, never actually making the music itself or the art or whatever. So a lot of that going on as well. So at sometime in I guess this was probably mid-99 or so, this came out, this piece of software, if none of you have seen it, it's called Napster. It was a really big deal for a lot of people all of a sudden. And I had a background in information retrieval in computer science, and I saw this happening, and it was amazing. So I would type my artist name into this, and I would just see tons and tons of results come back with my music, and this was awesome. I didn't really care. I was never making any money on music. Very, very few people do. And so here I was saying, well, this is a great way for people to find out about stuff. I didn't care that you could steal it or whatever. It didn't really bother me at all. But my biggest problem with this was that all you had at the top was a text box. There was nothing else. There was just, you had to know what you were looking for. Someone had to type in my name, my performance name, to be able to find me at all on this thing. They couldn't just discover me or find out. I got really mad. I stopped making music. And I went to grad school. for some strange reason. I went to Columbia in New York, as you said, and I went to MIT. It was, all of a sudden I realized that we have to take care of this problem. All this music data is available to us, all this way to get at music. Let's fix this somehow, and let's make this a reality. But I didn't really know that I was entering into a growing and sort of almost crowded field called music retrieval. So a lot of you probably do a lot of music retrieval stuff right now without knowing it. You have the Shazam thing on your phone, for example. That's a prime music retrieval, music information retrieval application. It's querying music by what it sounds like, or doing music recommendation, or tempo detection. There's a lot of people working on this. Probably the field is I'd say, got 300 people in it right now. They have a yearly meeting. It's kind of a relatively big academic deal. There are some interesting things going on. When you have all these people working on, more or less teaching computers to listen to music to figure stuff out, people get focused on very weird and strange things. This work here on the top left is one of about, I'd say, 20 dissertations that were done in the past 10 years or so on the topic of genre detection. This is a very strange thing. It's you give a computer a bunch of music and you ask it, what genre is this song? Is it classical, rock, reggae, whatever? It's a very weird thing, because what you're doing is not teaching a computer to really understand music, but you're teaching it to figure out what you think music is. You're giving it the model ahead of time. You're saying, well, I think music is divided into these 7 things. For example, rock music and pop music. Can anyone tell me the difference between those two? You can't. It's a trick question, obviously. There is no difference between rock and pop music, actually. And then there's one called world music, which really just means anything that's not made in America, more or less. Again, it's an incredibly weird and broken concept, and then you want to teach a computer how to do it repeatably. You can't. So what's happening is people are making decisions on these computers that really don't make any sense for any real purpose whatsoever. Music retrieval has kind of grown over the years to do the following things. It's turned into a nice industry and a good way to get a degree doing stuff. You can do stuff like just searching for music or doing retrieval. That's relatively simple. You can do stuff like feature extraction, where you can automatically pick out the tempo or the key of a song, automatically tag or classify a song. For example, you can imagine the tags on Last.fm automatically detecting them given a piece of audio. That would be pretty cool. Things like composition automatically, making music automatically. And then, of course, things like recommendation and all that kind of stuff, which all of you have probably dealt with using stuff like Pandora or Amazon or whatever. The top one there, hit prediction, is like the worst case possible of music retrieval. It's some guys deciding that the computers can learn so much about music that they can tell us what's good and what's bad, which is, again, it's like the worst possible way to treat this whole system. The way I see this is always kind of the stuff is more creepy the higher you get there. So it's interesting the way it works, because the stuff on the bottom is relatively easy to build. Like obviously Google and company have done really well at doing search and retrieval over the past 10 years. No one really considers that a hard problem, although the scale they do it at is really impressive. And the stuff up top is more machine intelligence, kind of whatever. But then really, to me, it just gets creepier and creepier as you get up there. It's kind of not really giving a lot of care to the whole process. Anyway, this really affected me as an ex-musician and music lover and all of that. So I went to school. This is me. Well, it's not me, but it's the Media Lab. I was able to get a whole bunch of computers bought for me to do a lot of work on music stuff. It was actually quite nice. And I made a lot of sort of half art projects, half real things to sort of further the concept that, yes, we can start teaching computers about music, and we can do all this, but we need to be relatively nice about it and relatively smart about it. We can't just go and pretend that a computer can never really understand something as beautiful as a song, or something as personal as your favorite songs or your taste in music. I did a various set of projects. This was probably the most popular thing I've ever done in my life, continuing to this day, including the EchoNest. This was an online radio station called Eigenradio. It lasted about 2 years. We had untold millions of listeners tuning in. This is actually an internet radio stream that you can tune into, and what it did was listen to all possible actual over-the-air broadcasts all at once, and had the computer try to compose music based on all of that put together. So it was like this kind of half, future of music. This is what all music sounds like all put together, half bad joke, half art project, whatever. But the best part is, it actually was real. This was not like a fake thing. We actually did all the machine learning that most music retrieval people do to figure out stuff about music. So I was kind of putting half my scientist hat on, saying, I actually want to understand all music at once. And then half my kind of joker art guy thing on, saying, yeah, but it's going to sound like crap, because obviously the computer is not listening to music. It's just doing some math on the music. This is doing stuff like, eigenanalysis on spectrograms, all this kind of stuff that is very common these days in our space. So there's what you hear, and I'm going to play you a sample of it, is what a computer hears when it listens to music. Yeah? Turn it up a bit, excuse me. Whoops. I got it. Beautiful, isn't it? Anyway, yeah, you can dance to it. Anyway, so I'll play some more stuff like that in a little bit. This was another project we were doing where all of a sudden people were starting to do things like hit prediction and all of that, and we actually did a study of could you actually predict a rating review on a review site. This was, actually it worked, that's the funny part. You're looking here at the, I believe it's the t-test scores of the various correlations. I'm not sure, am I talking to a statistical audience or not? You guys probably know these words, that's cool, it's fine. Anyway, what we're doing here is if you know what the website Pitchfork does, or All Music Guide or whatever, they'll review things on a star rating. Pitchfork famously uses their 0.0 to 10.0 score rating. All Music Guide is stars with half stars, so they both have roughly a 0 to 10 thing. And what we did was we took the audio of all this and tried to regress it against the score. Kind of this joke of, could you actually predict a review of a song without actually hearing it? And scarily enough, it actually worked slightly well. We actually do have some correlation between some of the audio features and some of the ratings, mostly on the Pitchfork side, which is interesting. They tend to rate things like electronic music higher. So if you hear a heavy beat, you'll get a higher rating for that album, that kind of stuff. Really gross level analysis, but it was sort of funny to watch and see the reaction of the music criticism community on that one. Kept going. This is a Christmas project, very similar to the Eigenradio thing, where we played, try to teach a computer what Christmas meant. This is actually a big problem in the space. If you've got a whole iTunes library full of music, there is definitely one kind of music you never want to hear unless it's, December, maybe, 20th to December 24th in the evening, and that's Christmas music. You never want to hear that stuff anywhere else, ever, right, obviously. But no one has been able to predictably teach a computer, what Christmas music sounds like to automatically filter that stuff out. Excuse me. So what we did was, we built a model, obviously, to try to do it. It didn't work so well, but it worked better than chance, and it was kind of, again, proving that this stuff is very hard. But then what we did was, because we had the model, we could actually run it backwards, more or less, and actually compose Christmas music automatically. So here's what it sounds like. Like it? It's good, huh? Well, it's not the season for that, so we should stop. Anyway, so that was another very popular one. You can actually download that whole album if you're interested. I'm sure you all will rush home, and the first thing you will do. But anyway, more stuff along these lines. We had a sadness detector running for a while. This is a very good one. This is another kind of joke in the industry of can you detect mood or intent from a song? And again, we tried very hard to make that actually work to see if that would. You can give it a bunch of music and try to predict, will this song make you sad or not? Me saying that aloud sounds absolutely terribly stupid, right? I mean, how could a computer ever do that? Obviously, sadness is related to you, not just the stuff in the audio, but for some kind of music, obviously like slow acoustic music has a better chance of being sad than heavy metal does, for example. So there is always some correlation in the actual audio. And this is a program that would actually filter your iPod for you. You can tell the date of it by the model of iPods we used on the app there. I think it was 2004. Quickly, other things that we were working on at the time. This is concrete music. This is a very beautiful piece of concrete over there that we embedded a piece of software in to make music for 30 years. This would be something that more or less you would build a synthesizer inside a box that had to play for 30 years straight. I'll play you the music while I tell you about it, actually. That's when it turns on. The sound you're hearing. This is the birth of the machine here. This is supposed to go for 30 years straight, and we had it for about 3 weeks until someone unplugged it. And it's quite sad. We never got it going again, but it was kind of along the same lines of sort of having a computer system, sort of having a life to it and having something interesting in it, other than just playing a file back. So no one ever heard the end of this song, but it's all there for us. So along these lines, we were sort of working out while we were building things like the Eigenradio or A Singular Christmas or the Concrete Music. It's funny talking to a lot of composers who are doing stuff with computers listening to music, sort of the rules they would use when they would build stuff like this. And it's still happening now. It's funny to watch sort of, this was about 5 years ago, we all talked about this. And still people are sort of using these rules when they do composition on these lines. It's interesting to see how people are building things automatically that are making music. Either they're listening to the music or it's some algorithmic thing. These rules were actually very interesting. My favorite one is don't tell anyone how it works. This actually sticks with us, and I'll get into that a bit later about how the music recommendation world is working. But there's this kind of magic inherent in these machines always. And when you're a scientist or an artist or whatever, you kind of get stuck explaining things to people as I'm doing now. Obviously, it's very hard to explain how that box worked or how that Singular Christmas thing worked, or the Eigenradio stuff. It's a lot of math, a lot of stuff that you really don't care. It's kind of a black box. And a lot of people just generally don't ever explain that to anybody. Obviously, all this stuff ties into what's going on in the real world outside of music. This is the infamous Eigenfaces work, which is now used in all sorts of things, from airport security to the face detection on your phone or whatever. This is beautiful stuff where you take a bunch of pictures, do some math on it, figure out what's going on in it, and then try to present a model of the average set of things that are based on that. And if you have some sort of prototypes of all faces or all pieces of music or whatever, you have all this limitless power to make either beautiful things or detect things or do whatever you want. More pictures of this. This is a bunch of birds all put together, for example. A lot of really neat stuff. But moving back to music. So all that I just talked about is kind of peculiar, but it all ties into this right here. This is some website. I think it was called iLike. I'm not sure where it is right now. This is probably 3 years old. But this is a website that I think it was a Facebook or MySpace plugin. I don't really remember. They got bought by somebody. It isn't kind of lost in the sands of time. I'm sure you'll never see this website again. But this was a website where you would tell what kind of music you liked, and it would tell you more music you should like. I don't know if anybody knows who Aphex Twin is, but a lot of you do, but these results here are probably the worst results you'll ever see, ever, on anything. This is a joke to most people. Like, you see this, and you don't even know why this person took the time to make this website work, or like if it's a waste of science, or something failed, or it's a bug, you don't even know. But this was shown to people non-ironically, very seriously, as a music discovery thing right here. And this was using a lot of that stuff I just talked about, all that kind of, let's listen to some music, let's figure out what people are talking about, let's figure out your usage and do collaborative filtering or some statistics on all of that. And you end up with this. It's kind of this lack of care that you'll see in a lot of these further examples. This is a website by my dear friend Anthony, who runs this website called The Hype Machine. He also has recommendations on his site. These are probably, I can't imagine where he got this information from, but it doesn't make any sense. And it's just like, I see this all over the internet, and you probably have as well, where you'll see a recommendation for an artist or some automatically generated thing with music, and it makes you sad a little bit to know that so much effort went into these things. More of the same. There's this weird predilection to show a bunch of numbers next to artists' names now, like that actually matters to us, those floating point numbers on the right there. There's a lot of weird stuff going on that we're just looking at all day when we listen to music on the internet. It gets worse and worse. I'll just stop going through bad examples. Makes me kind of depressed most of the time. Anyway, this is actually interesting. We did a study of this when we started seeing these things happening. So collaborative filtering, if you don't already know, is how you get most of your personalizations right now. If you go on Amazon, you bought some book, or you bought a I don't know, inflatable bed, or a rat cage. I'm just thinking of items, and it has some big matrix of all the things you bought and all the things people also bought that were like the things you bought. It's all based on the sales of the things you bought. So Debbie and I both bought the same rat cage, so therefore we'd also both like the same airbed, for example. It makes absolutely no sense. We did a study of this, though, because with music, it's actually particularly terrible, because if no one ever bought a thing to start with, say you're like me in New York making music that nobody's buying, I will never get in their system. It's called the feedback loop, and it's a known issue with collaborative filtering, and yet collaborative filtering persists as the #1 way of doing discovery on the internet. So we did a study here. This was actually in 2004, where we took a data set and did collaborative filtering on it over and over again, assuming no new music got into the system. So assuming the world music kind of stopped, and all we had to learn about new music was collaborative filtering. After something like 100,000 iterations of this, which would only take about 6 months in real internet time, this was the only music left in the world, right? Everybody else was gone, because it kind of, what happens is the popular stuff kind of clustered up into these pieces here, and then they ended up being the only things alive. And so, for example, in set C there, you could see all the other kind of folky country guys, they all got beaten by those three for some reason. That was where all the usage data was trending at the time. So therefore, that's all we're left with now. So you can run fun stuff like this and just see that, over time, popular stuff always wins, and we got to get around that. It affects us more than just usage data stuff. This is actually work that I actually did with another guy, but we have a lot of usage data now on the internet. We actually have a lot of actual purchase data as well from some label partners. This is really interesting stuff to see where people are actually buying things. If you ever go to iTunes and buy something, or you're streaming something from Spotify, or whatever you do, you're being watched, right? We know where you live, we know what you bought, how many times you bought it, all sorts of stuff. And this kind of demographic stuff is following you around. It won't let you go. So you can see, obviously, the jokey kind of Bon Jovi's fans in New Jersey are there. This is actually 6 weeks of data here. This is all stuff that was happening all over the internet there. So be careful what you do. This is taken sort of a capitalistic turn. There's probably about 13 or 14 companies that I know of that are doing what's known as kind of analytics on fans or listeners. They sell data of what you're doing on the internet to other companies. So you're, I don't know, you listen to a song on Last.fm or MySpace or whatever. Someone about 2 weeks later will be drawing you as a dot in a beautiful little graph over there and selling that to a major label to say, well, look, the sales or the plays of this artist are trending now all of a sudden. It's a huge business, and it's kind of like a reflection of what's going on the internet as far as all your stuff is public, everybody knows what you're doing. It's kind of not the best thing in the world. All that said, I saw this happening and started a company. This was right after I left grad school with my co-founder Tristan, who does audio analysis stuff. We're in beautiful Davis Square. You should stop by sometime. This is our first office. We've moved out since then to another room next door. It's much bigger now. It was very pretty. It was an interesting thing to do if you're a scientist and you really believe strongly in something to start a company. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about doing this, maybe, I don't know. It's very interesting. You'll learn a lot. You'll also hit yourself. There's a lot of terrible things happening and a lot of really nice things happening, but I'm glad I did it, and here we are. So that was our first office. And the reason we started the company is because we had this plot, at least I had this in the back of my mind the whole time. This is the music space that we see. There are people that are nice and people that care. And there's people that are not nice and people that don't care. And there's various combinations of both. So we would love to be one day at the top right of that chart, obviously. Let's hope, right? But I want to show you the various parts of what's going on here. So obviously, to your bottom left there, there's a lot of this going on. Just like, I don't care about you, I don't care about music, I just care about money, and I'm just whatever, screw you all, right? And there's a lot of that going on. This is, just the worst possible kinds of people doing this, and they'll still stay around forever. And it's not helping music, it's not helping people, it's not really helping anybody. Most interestingly, I put guys like Last.fm, Pandora, whatever else you use to discover music down there. Obviously, they're really nice. They really believe in things. They want everyone to love music and be really happy, but they don't actually care very much about it, right? What they do is they look at the usage data, or in Pandora's case, for example, they've hired a bunch of people to listen to music, and they've done it in such a way that the independents are not getting into their system at all. They had, at last count, something really small, like 250,000 songs total. Just as a point of note, we know about 20 million. So that's a tiny fraction of what's actually out there. And they're doing it because that's how they wanted to scale their business, and they don't care so much about stuff that's not that popular. But to me, that just strikes of, I don't really care. We're doing fine. People mostly just want to listen to top 40 radio. Okay, whatever, that's easy. So Obviously, I don't put them much high on the care scale. Guys like Hit Prediction, they actually somehow believe that they're being nice to the world by helping you make big hits, and obviously they do not care at all about what that means and how that actually works. So obviously they're all the way down there. The labels, for example, not the nicest guys in the world, although, you know, whatever, they do their thing, but they do care. It's interesting. You know, they really do believe in what they're doing and, you know, how artists will get found out and noticed about, and they really do believe in their artists. But as far as the nice quotient goes, I'm sure you've all heard the stories. It's just not the best business to be in. So one day, you know, maybe not right now, but we're working on that one. That's where we're going to be. That's our little position in the world. So anyway. So here's a company. That was us. Actually, so the company's been around for 5 years, but I start counting around then usually because that's when we really started growing. It was myself and my co-founder in this room for about a good 2 years, kind of turning our dissertations into real something, which is a really hard thing to do. You have all these equations and you want to kind of make a real thing out of it. But we did it. We started pretty small. We had like, you know, a little bit of data, some music, and we had some ideas. And then we've grown since then. It's now 3 years later. It's now an office with about 30 people in it, lots and lots of computers, billion documents, actually 5 billion, yeah. 1.2 million artists, 20 million songs. We are a back-end company. We provide music data to the entire world of music all over the place. Our clients include labels, they include music streaming services, all sorts of people all over the place. And again, our whole point of the company is to try to do the nice thing with the most care. Actual, you know, whatever this is, the word used to describe the company, that's what we are. I won't even say it out loud because it sounds like a pitch, but that's what we do. So where it all comes from is this. So as a music fan, this is how I discover music still. I do not use music recommendation services, including our own. I don't use any automated way. I read websites. This is my favorite website ever, I Love Music. It's a web forum for music critics, more or less. It's a bunch of really snarky people that just fight about music all day, and it's amazing. Just like the energy and the love they've got for music is just awesome. And so I spend a good hour a day reading this website. There's other ones. I Hate Music is another one. It's kind of the inverted version. You know, it's white on black instead of black on white, but it's the same thing. It's people here. They spend, I don't know how long they spend just writing reviews on spec for other people. They're not getting paid for this. They're just doing it because they love music. So, and then of course, actually listening to music is very easy now. This is Spotify, if any of you don't know it. This is one of our clients. They're awesome. You can just double click on any song and it just starts playing. It's really quite nice. So I kind of consider the ways of listening to music solved, but discovery and all the data around it really haven't gotten very far yet. This is how we do it. So I talked a little bit before about the audio side of things. This is my co-founder's work mostly. He was doing, for a good 5 years at MIT, doing machine listening. So you given an audio file, you do all this math on it to pick out all the stuff in the audio file, the tempo, pitch, the meter, all the structure of the audio. For every sound, you can get what note it is and how loud it is and all sorts of cool stuff. Totally automatically. It takes about 10 seconds a song to run this. And then my side, given my background in information retrieval and natural language processing, I will go and read those websites automatically, the ones I just talked about, like I Love Music. We will, given any artist name, we have these lists of just descriptive terms, totally just things like noun phrases, adjectives, whatever, all with saliences next to them. I think you can guess probably the band here that's being talked about, Swedish Dancing Queen, Swedish pop. We have this immense database of all this stuff, and this is all completely automatically done, so we can scan through. We get about 10,000 new web documents an hour that we process through and update all of our artist data based on all this. We get a lot of data from our partners. We work with all 4 majors. We work with big companies like Music Brains, a lot of our partners like Thumbplay, Spotify, all over the place. We suck in all of their kind of metadata and do all sorts of stuff with it. We also look at listener data, like I was saying. We look at how people just do everything all over the place whenever possible. All of our web crawlers are finding out if you told MySpace that you smoke, or you like the book The Road, or the kind of music you like and what average tempo of it is. We do this in a very non-creepy way, obviously. This is all anonymized, but we use it as sort of our kind of the pulse of the internet music style stuff. So kind of getting into what's happening right now a little bit. We give out all this data. Obviously, we sell it. We make a lot of money selling this data to various companies, but we also have an API. So API means if you're a developer, without having to do much work, you can get access to all of our data for free on a non-commercial license. So this is a bunch of APIs. So 7 Digital has a popular one. We have our own, obviously, Last.fm, MusicBrainz, SoundCloud, and we have our own as well. So there's all these ways now of making stuff without having to do much work, and it's really quite interesting. You can make mobile apps, web apps if you want, just tapping into various companies' sort of platforms. How we see where things are going here with all of this. So given all of this, if you're making a music experience of the future, like you don't like how Pandora works, you want to make your own, you have to, excuse me, deal with the various companies down here. You need engineering support, well, you work with us, or you work with MusicBrainz or Amazon. You need content. I'll talk about that in a second, but there are various ways of actually getting audio content now without having to deal with lawyers. Obviously, on the audience side, you put it through one of the labels, or you work with us, or you go on the App Store, or whatever you want. And this is sort of what's been going on in music. Less and less people are buying stuff. They're not going to the iTunes Store as much as they were. They're not usually really signing up for music streaming services with a subscription. What they're doing is just listening to Pandora on their phones, or they're playing Guitar Hero, or they're playing some iPad game that has music baked into it, or whatever. And everybody knows about this. This is sort of what's been going on. So we're all sort of preparing for a future in which whoever you are, you have some idea about music, we can help you out here in various ways to get that experience into the hands of actual people, into the audience. So we do all sorts of stuff with all of that. I'm not getting into pitch territory here, but that's sort of the bulk of all the stuff we can do and work with, and all sorts of things, from music recommendations to analytics to giving you metadata, stuff like lyrics and events and all of that. All sorts of stuff can now be possible without really doing much work because of what we're doing. The content side is also interesting. The music industry has been really terrible about actually letting people play music, which is quite funny when you think about it. So we've been trying to work with them. We have now one label deal and a few aggregator deals to help music developers sort of, let people make stuff with their stuff, really. So we're borrowing their content and proxying the music industry for a lot of people right now, working with various companies to do that. And this is one relatively new thing I like to show, because you'll probably be hearing about this a lot more if you're interested in music stuff. This is something called PlayedR, which is actually invented by the ex-founder of Last.fm, this guy, Richard Jones, and then they have a player now, and it's actually quite interesting. You just log on and it just looks sort of like iTunes, but what's happening is automatically you're broadcasting your collection without really having to do any work. And in various ways, this may or may not be legal, but we're working with them to kind of keep that on the good side right now, because the way this works is sort of, if you have local content, you're allowed to listen to it from wherever you are. That's just one of these base rights that we have, more or less. And we might be trying to take that away from people, but I hope that we can keep holding on to that. So PlayedR is something to really watch out for because there's a lot of potential. Something I should show you as well. So with all the potential and stuff, I want to show you some examples of stuff people are making with all this data available. Mostly it's interesting stuff. This is an iPhone app that someone working with us built. So if you know what Pandora does, they've got that 250,000 songs in it. But we've got this much bigger database, 20 million songs or so. In this case, 10 million in this catalog. And you can listen to it through any means necessary. You can stream it by tempo or pick the key of the song you want to hear. So I can show you a little demo of it. This was a demo actually for, we were in San Francisco showing this off. And so you can say, I want to play artists that sound like the Black Keys that are within miles of me, because we have those sort of location data of where bands come from, obviously. So plays, this is all sort of bluesy bands that are around San Francisco. What's really cool, because of all of our text data and all of that stuff that we've had people talking about music, you can really type in anything up there. This is where it gets kind of fun. So I typed in academic, electronic music, Turned off the filters. Maybe not academic, but close enough, whatever. Of course, of Canada. So you can also do, since we have all this data, we also can tell you all about the internet pictures of them, blogs, reviews, news, all sorts of stuff in our huge database of music. You can make this now for free. Like, you don't need to do anything about it. You just use all of our data all automatically just using our APIs. And it's all kind of built in. So it's a really cool, future of music style stuff. On the audio side, since we know so much about every single song, a lot of people have been making really cool kind of interactive music things. This was a program that actually my co-founder Tristan made that actually will take any song and convert it into a swing version. So if you know what that means, it'll actually convert the timing of the beats to make it sound like it's swinging. You'll hear in 1 second this song. Sounds great when he sings. I bet you forgot how the original sounds, but it doesn't sound like that. It sounds so much better that way, right? This is all completely automated, right? I mean, there was no manual notation of the beats. It was just, you give it there's a website now. You can just upload any song you want, and within a few seconds, it'll show you the swing version there. You can check it out. I just wanted to run through a couple other fun demos of what's going on. This is one of our clients, Thumbplay.
And we sent all that music right to your smartphone.
A tongue-in-cheek.
Time to work out, but no time to make a playlist? Let Genie do the heavy lifting. Just create a song and give me 14 more, just like it. Oh, feel like you're spending a whole lot commuting? Nothing makes the time fly like chillaxing to your favorite tune. Thumbplay music never stops. Some other companies, I don't know, they might charge $10 million. Who knows why?
Anyway, no one charges $10 million. But these streaming services that are popping up, a lot of them now, Thumbplay competes with, I don't know, 5 or 6 that I know right now, and they're all competing on the experience. This is what the interesting part is. Everyone can get relatively easily a catalog of 10, 12 million songs and make a website and charge you $9 to $12 a month, as he'll about to say. That's how much it costs to have it on your mobile. But what they need to sort of differentiate themselves is much better ways of experiencing the content. So they work with us on a really cool song-to-song feature where you click on a song without having to do anything. It'll just make a playlist for you. That kind of simple stuff is very valuable for a lot of people. Other clients that use this, Mogg is a really big one. They use us for this radio feature, which is actually quite nice. You have a slider for sort of, how much you want new stuff to come in. This is, a playlist of mine, and I kind of dragged it to say, I already know these guys, but I want to hear more stuff that's farther away kind of thing. So it's quite nice interfaces you can get done now. That's the Thumbplay interface. There's various ways of discovering music. This is one of our friends, not our friend, I guess. He's just a guy that uses our API. He decided to make this app called Audio Kicker. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a thing where you turn off the audio. It sounds really kitty. But the idea is that you're in a room with a bunch of people, and you all have your iPods or iPhones or whatever, and what you do is you all shake them at once, and it finds this playlist that kind of matches everybody all at once using all of our stuff. So it's like, I like this kind of music, and she likes this kind of music, but they can find sort of a union of all of that and make a playlist that plays at the same time on everybody's phone. It's kind of like the global jukebox for a party. So that's going to come out in the App Store really soon. We're all pretty excited about it. All sorts of stuff can be built now, and it's kind of crazy, from really weird stuff to really useful, valuable stuff. And more in the next couple of years, you're going to see lots of different applications come out that tap into this kind of data. From the absolute insane things like donking music automatically. This is one of my favorite examples. Anybody know what donk music is? Oh, nobody. No, wow. All right, so donk music. Wow. All right, so I'm trying to think of how to explain this. So anyway, there's these guys in northern England that decided they were going to make a new genre of music, and it's sped up existing music with this really annoying sound under it. That's really all it is, and it actually took off. And so somebody here made an app where you can just convert, just like the swinger kind of thing, in any music into donk versions of it. Now, they wanted it, I think, to sound like an alarm clock, like a really annoying alarm clock. You're going to wake everybody up. This was another one, adding cowbell. Sounds awesome. This is a Knight Rider theme, you know, Knight Rider, David Hasselhoff. The possibilities are endless. This is an automated like mashup jam maker. It's quite nice. It has automated mixes between songs. There's automated beat tracking. One thing, and I'll end with this because my time is running thin, but I wanted to just end on this note because this is actually coming full circle from about 10 years ago. It's a very brief story. This guy, Ben, here, he actually for us. He's a musician, and we hired him. He actually didn't know how to code or anything, but I really liked his style, so I hired him. This is actually how I hire people. It's really terrible. And so he had to, you know, his first 3 months of work were learning, you know, how to write computer programs and stuff, and now he's really good at it. But, you know, he's worked for us for 2 years, and he really wants to be a musician, and I feel terrible that I'm kind of keeping him from his dream in life. So I arranged to send him to this place called Steem, which is a very well-known music art residency in Amsterdam. I did some time there. It's a really beautiful place. And so I just said, I sent him there for a week. We flew him out there. I said, go make some music with our stuff, because I showed you a lot of like funny, jokey things like the cowbell or the mashup stuff or the donk, whatever. It's really funny, and lots of people send it around to their friends, but nobody is making what I consider music. You know, obviously that's a loaded term, but like no one is making pieces of music that people are supposed to enjoy on their own. So Ben, you know, really did some nice, you might not like this, but I think it's quite nice. And it uses, so what he did was he was out there, he had his friend play harp and sing and all of that, and he ran it through all of our stuff, and he kind of composed music around all of those sounds by clustering them all together automatically using all of our tools and APIs, and then kind of real time kind of making a space throughout the sounds. So I'll just play it a little bit for you. So I wanted to end with that just to show kind of a nice way to do things. So thank you all for listening to me talk for 40 minutes. If you have any questions, I would love to talk more about all of this stuff.
So Pandora has a relatively small library.
Yeah.
You have information on a great deal more, possibly kind of like richer information. What of the apps out there that are being developed with your information do you think is going to be replacing it?
So yeah, I would love to tell you more about it, but you have to wait 2 months. I'm just telling you. But yeah, it's in process. So it actually, the deals we got with the content guys just closed about a month ago, so we couldn't actually do this until now, and now we have another way. It's actually quite nice. I'm really excited about it. So soon, I'm taking us to the future a little bit, probably within a year from now. None of you know who I am right now. None of you know what the EchoNest is, but things are happening that pretty soon there'll be a lot of stuff powered by our things right now. So I'm really looking forward to that. Yes?
I recall a project a couple years back that used a software that looked at what songs you played after other songs and was trying to do user correlation. Do you happen to know anything about correlating like what music people choose and the order they choose it?
I don't know that particular piece of research, but I could guess. I mean, I could guess who it is and how they did it. But I mean, that's very interesting. That kind of stuff, usage data on playlists. You know, so these are choices that you made to play one song after another, right? So you're right, not just you're listening to a random stream, but you're actually making the decision. Yeah. There's a lot of data in there. We actually have a lot of that data from some of our partners, which is great. We've been analyzing it now. It's actually quite rich. So when we just built the playlist API, for example, about a month ago, and we embedded a lot of that information we got from that kind of analysis into it to kind of, because people don't, like radio programmers, for example, you know, they have really ingrained rules about how they play music. They're not just going to play a bunch of really high energy songs all at once. They're going to kind of weave it in. Knowledge about this. We looked at all of that, and we kind of hopefully did it the nicest way we could.
Are you familiar with the book This Is Your Brain on Music?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That was several years ago, I guess. Because I seem to remember it had a lot about computers not being able to tell, you know, a piece of music that has been changed, you know, beats up and down, whatnot. That's clearly not true anymore.
Yeah, so that's Dan Levitin, right, I believe, yes. So yeah, he was taking it from a, what we call score level, like kind of music, like notes being played by a composer kind of thing, right? Obviously, it's very related stuff, but we're looking at things from a much more perceptual angle, I would take it. So given the stuff that your ears hear, you know, in the order that it comes in and all of that, we analyze it very musically. So we're not just looking at so he had a point back then about that kind of stuff. You would just throw in a bunch of random signals into a computer and it would try to make some decision, and you could actually reverse it and randomize it and it would still have the same answer, which we don't do. We don't believe in that at all. So we've always done it from a much more musical, you know, songs over time kind of thing, all that. So, I think the field has definitely grown in the intervening years.
It seems like a lot of the work that you do has to do with electronic music and the digitization of music and alternate on that fundamental level. But what about there's a sort of warmth associated with traditional music and instrumentation, and have you put any thought or is there any work being done in that front with respect to this?
So when you say warmth, can you explain a little bit?
There's the clear, not exactly sinusoidal
right.
sound
Yeah.
to like clean, crisp.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
What you need wireless.
Yeah. It's a failure of our analysis that it works really well on synthetic music, I would call it that. Let's just say music that was made as putting together pieces of other things, right? It's just the way things work in a computer. Obviously, it can understand stuff made on a computer probably better than it can stuff but still, obviously we do as best as we can with, works relatively well. Obviously, it's noisier and it's harder to fully understand, but we're always working towards it. And I don't really have much of a problem with most of that.
I really like that you try to use music in ways that are appropriate and still like respecting music as an art form. How do you see automatic music composition? Like have you ever tried it? Like how do you think it can be used appropriately?
Sure. Oh yeah, I definitely have tried. I mean, the Icon Radio and Christmas were versions of automatic music in a sense. Maybe not in the way that like a David Cope would pull it off, whatever, but it's definitely in that way. I want to see it as a separate art form. I don't think that people should try to appreciate it as normal music. Right? That was one of the, I don't know if you read that list of things, but like synthesis is just fast composition kind of idea, where like what Cope was doing, I don't know if you know David Cope, but he spent all his life building automated composers at the score level, more or less, actually composing fugue kind of music automatically. That I didn't really ever see the use in that. It's like having a robot trying to make you be creative faster. I don't see that as a useful extra thing in the world. But if you do that right and you actually imbue it with some new thing that you never heard before because a computer made it, then that's beautiful, and we should really look at that. So when I made like Icon Radio, obviously it sounds like nasty noise to most people, but if you actually really listen to it for a while, what you're hearing is a computer trying to understand something that we take for granted. And for me, that sounds just as beautiful as any real music is. So.
Have you ever tried it as like I'm gonna have an automatic composer generate like 10 bars and then that'll like inspire me to like, oh, here's
Yeah.
those keys.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I haven't tried that, but I'm sure There are definitely, even in the marketplace now, there are ways to, I think GarageBand or Logic, one of them has sort of now automated, like helping you pull out I could see people using that to get inspired. Not for me personally, but yeah, I would assume.
So one of your rules was don't tell anybody how it works.
Yeah. But before I start, that wasn't my rule. That was a rule of the common rules. It was like the expectations. I don't believe in that one personally. But
okay. So I'm just curious, is that coming from a intellectual property side, or is it people don't want to know that music can be reduced into these massive?
It was definitely an intellectual property. That wasn't it. It was always like it takes the magic out of it for sure. It's like the magician giving away. Also, people like maybe they don't want to know, or maybe it's not exciting to them, or it's also sometimes complicated, and it just for a lot of the composers I was talking to about this at the time, it was like. It was better if you didn't tell anybody, because then it felt more real to people, you know. It felt like you were doing it, like you were just not hiding anything. It was, I guess it's hard to explain, but it was more magical if you didn't tell anybody how it worked.
So if you don't believe in that, are you going to, or have you published something
Yep.
that gives more detail on how you break these things down?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually an interesting point. So we don't do, well, we sort of do, but not really. We don't have a recommender right now, for example, at the EchoNest. We sell similarity data, which is we sell lists of artists against other artists, more or less. We sell the same thing for songs. And how we do that is actually really well known by people that care. If they ask us, we give them the entire set of things and how we do it and all that. And you could actually go deep with our API. You can see the sources of all this stuff. For example, when we compare two artists, we look at only text data. We don't look at audio data at all, which is relatively interesting, but another topic. But you have all the words that were used to compare these two artists together, and you can get those words. You can go back up the chain and see, why did they say that X is similar to Y, and we can tell you with our API call. So we're trying not to be, want to open that up and let anybody see it.
Well, so Brian has actually graciously agreed to join us in the dining hall for informal discussion after this, but I'll ask you to join me in thanking him now.